Hello, and welcome to All Things Cryptid. I am your host, Amanda Winter, and if you hear a hum in the background today, ignore that. That is my air conditioner. It is hot, hot, hot in my podcasting room. So, today we are descending into the dark, crushing depths of the world's most enduring maritime mystery. But before we dive into the murky depths today, I want to take a quick second to dedicate this entire episode to my wonderful daughter, my oldest, who is celebrating a milestone birthday on July 25th. She has brought so much light and magic into my life, just like the ocean legends we're getting ready to talk about. Happy 30th birthday, my sweet little mermaid. This one's for you. For as long as human beings have pushed off from the safety of dry land and set sail across the endless blue, we've reported encounters with impossible beings, half human, half beast, equipped with haunting voices capable of luring seasoned sailors to a watery grave. They occupy a bizarre, shifting space on our map. Are they ancient folklore? Misunderstood marine mammals? Sentient relic primates? Or proof that something ancient still lives in the dark places beneath the waves? Today, we are taking a journey across history, logbooks, secret files, and viral videos to untangle mermaids and sirens. But before we cast our nets, we have to clear up a massive historical misconception right off the bat. Are mermaids and sirens actually the same thing? If you ask the average person today, they'll tell you a siren is just an evil mermaid with a vocal coach. But historically, that couldn't be further from the truth. In classical Greek mythology, the original sirens had 0 fish scales. None. They were actually bird women, creatures with feathered wings, sharp talons, human faces, and voices so unnervingly sweet they cause passing sailors to lose all sense of self-preservation and wreck their ships against jagged reefs. In early Greek art, they were depicted as giant birds with women's heads. By the 10th century, Byzantine encyclopedia known as Suda, scholars were writing that from the chest up, sirens resembled sparrows, while below they were women. Why birds? Because the ancient Greeks associated birds with the most beautiful, haunting sounds in the natural world. It wasn't until the late Middle Ages that sirens underwent a complete physical evolution. European bestiaries began merging the bird woman siren with older water spirits and ocean deities. Their feathered wings dropped off, replaced by sleek, scaly fishtails, but their defining characteristics remained: the seductive, lethal voice. A mermaid, on the other hand, comes from the Old English mer, meaning sea, and maid, meaning young woman. Historically, mermaids are aquatic humanoids, woman above the waist, fish below. While some mermaids sing, their primary mythological role isn't always luring men to death. They were often seen as guardians of the sea, storm omens, or lonely creatures of the tide. So to recap, the original siren, bird body, woman's voice, guaranteed shipwreck, the mermaid. Fish body, woman's torso, unpredictable encounter. Over time, history blurred them together into the iconic sea maiden we know today. And, as we're about to see, sailors staring into the ocean mist at 3 a.m. didn't care about the academic taxonomy. They were just trying to process what was staring back at them. Now, it's easy to write off merfolk as Disney fairy tales, but if you open the actual historical logbooks, written not by fiction authors, but by naturalists, holy men, and elite sea captains, a far more unsettling picture emerges. Let's trace the ancient history and early modern encounters. 1st century AD, Pliny the Elder. We start in ancient Rome with Pliny the Elder, the ultimate scientist of his era. In natural history, Pliny documents reports of Nereids, mer creatures with rough, scaly human bodies. He casually notes that villagers near the ocean frequently heard horn-like calls echoes along the beach. More terrifyingly, Pliny records accounts of mermen in the Gulf of Cadiz, who would climb onto the decks of ships at night. According to his records, the creature was so impossibly heavy that the spot where it set would immediately begin to sink, threatening to drag the entire vessel underwater if it lingered too long. Between 1040 and 1105 AD, the famous scholar Rabbi Shlomo Yachowski writes in the Talmud about aquatic humanoids called Sirens in Old French. Later, rabbinical commentaries like Mashav Zikaman explicitly detail creatures, female, from the navel up with long hair and breast, and pure fish from the navel down, renowned for their beautiful vocalizations. By the mid-13th century, a Scandinavian text titled Speculum Regale, the King's Mirror, documented a terrifying mermaid sighted off Greenland. Listen to how specific this description is. Like a woman as far down as her waist, with long hands, soft hair, and a head in all respects like a human being. But her fingers were not pointed. They were united into a web like the feet of a water bird. Below the waist she was a scaled fish with fins. When she appeared, she would rise with fish in her hands. If she played with the fish or threw them toward the ship, sailors knew crew members were doomed to die in a storm. But if she threw the fish away from the ship, it was a good omen. In 1403, near Kampen in the Netherlands, a severe storm breached a dike, flooding the inland river. When the waters receded, locals discovered a mermaid trapped in the shallow mud. According to the local reports, they captured her, brought her into town, cleaned her off, and dressed her in human clothing. The accounts claim she never learned to speak, but she adapted to living on land for years, constantly trying to cast herself back into sea whenever she got near open water. Okay, well that's depressing. Just saying. Then comes a famous explorer report in history. On January 9th, 1493, sailing near the Dominican Republic, Christopher Columbus recorded seeing 3 distinct mermaids leaping out of the water. His log entry is hilariously blunt. They are not as beautiful as they are painted, although to some extent they have a human appearance in the face. Skeptics love to point out that Columbus likely saw manatees, but Columbus was an elite navigator who spent his life on the water. Could a seasoned sea captain truly mistake a bulbous, whiskered, paddle-tailed manatee as a female humanoid figure with a face? Who knows? Next, we move to the 1600s. A farmer named Thomas Reynald in Wales spotted a mermaid off the coast of Pending. He gathered a crowd of villagers who watched her for 3 full hours. The report was investigated by local officials and deemed so credible that an official illustration was commissioned in 1604. In 1608, while navigating the Arctic waters, legendary explorer Henry Hudson wrote that 2 of his crewmen, Thomas Hills and Robert Rayner, saw a mermaid swim right up to the side of the vessel. Hudson recorded, "From the navel upward, her back and breasts were like a woman's. Her skin was very white, and long hair hanging down behind, of color black. In her going down they saw her tail, which was like the tail of a porpoise, speckled like a mackerel." In 1614, even Captain John Smith, founder of Jamestown, allegedly logged a sighting off Massachusetts, describing a graceful female figure swimming near the shore with large eyes, a finely shaped nose, long ears, and vibrant green hair. In 1670, off Faroe Islands, Reverend Lucas Dabibs, I'm probably mispronouncing that and I'm sorry, documented a local sighting where multiple parishioners watched a long-haired mermaid holding a fish in her hand just off the rocky shore, an encounter that likely influenced Danish native Hans Christian Andersen generations later. In 1718, Dutch painter Samuel Floers claimed to have actually captured a small mermaid in the East Indies, keeping her in a water tank in his home for 4 days. He drew her portrait, noting she made small squeaking sounds like a mouse before sadly refusing to eat and dying of starvation. In 1739, in England, local fishermen caught a strange 4-foot creature with webbed feet, a human-like face, a depressed nose, and a salmon-like tail that allegedly groaned like a human as it expired on the bank. It was later placed on public exhibition. In 1797, in Scotland, schoolmaster William Monroe wrote a detailed letter describing a woman sitting on a rock at Sandside Bay, casually combing long light brown hair. He watched her for several minutes from a distance, noting her ruddy cheeks, blue eyes, and distinctive features before she slid effortlessly into the surf. As we push into the 19th and 20th centuries, you might expect science to eradicate these superstitions. Instead, local newspapers and military logs around the globe began publishing surprisingly precise accounts. In August 1866, off the coast of Gabarus, Nova Scotia, on Cape Breton Island, fishermen out with a local named Mr. Bagnall spotted what they thought was a floating human corpse. As they rowed closer to retrieve the body, the creature suddenly turned around and, in an upright sitting position, looked directly at the men and submerged. It resurfaced again moments later, staring at them intently before diving for good. The encounter was printed in the Cape Brooklyn Eagle newspaper. Witness described a human face, shoulders, and arms, but with 2 bizarre details. Its head was covered in dark hair as thick as a horse's mane, and the fingers on one hand were unusually long. Across the Atlantic, in the Scottish Orkney Islands, a creature known as the Dearness Mermaid made reoccurring appearances in Newark Bay over several summers in the 1890s, witnessed by hundreds of locals. Local newspapers described a creature 6 to 7 feet long, with a small black head, a long white neck, and a snow-white upper body and 2 distinctive human-like arms that it would wave frantically while sitting on sunken rocks. Just a few miles away off Hoy Island in September 1913, lobster fishermen aboard Ralph Taylor's boat reported seeing a creature rise 3 feet out of the water near the famous Old Man Ahoy sea stack. Taylor noted it looked like a woman wearing a draped shawl over her shoulders. It was the 3rd time his crew had seen it that month. This is perhaps the most fascinating military account in history. During World War II, Japanese soldiers stationed on the K Islands in Indonesia repeatedly reported encounters with amphibious, humanoid creatures the local villagers called orang ikan, which translates to fish people in Malay. These weren't glamorous fairy tale mermaids. These soldiers described 4-foot 9-inch creatures with pinkish skin, human-like faces and limbs, spiky spines along their heads and shoulders, and a mouth shaped like a carp. They were amphibious and seen walking on the rocks near lagoons and swimming with extreme speed. Sergeant Tara Horiba recorded that after a dead orang ikan was found on a beach, he personally examined the body. After the war, Horiba tried to convince Japanese scientists to investigate the K Islands, but mainstream academics dismissed his reports as wartime delusion. Now we move on to 1947 in Scotland. An old Scottish fisherman reported seeing a mermaid sitting directly on a floating wooden herring box used to preserve live lobsters, about 20 yards from the shore. She was combing her hair, but the moment she made eye contact with him, she panicked and plunged into the sea. In 1967 in British Columbia, Canada, hundreds of passengers aboard a public ferry traveling near Main Island spotted a blonde-haired female figure resting on the rocks. Multiple tourists testified that she had a dolphin-like tail and was actively holding and eating a raw salmon. The sighting was picked up by the Victoria Times colonist, sparking a regional sensation. Now, when we think of mermaids, we picture the salt water of the Atlantic or the Pacific. But some of the most compelling reports in American history don't come from the ocean at all. They come from inland freshwater. The ancient Susquehanna River winds 444 miles through New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. And in the late 19th and 20th centuries, it became a hotbed for aquatic cryptid sightings. In the summer of 1881, a respected veteran fisherman named Henry Lukes was working the deep waters opposite of the Dugan Run in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Over a few short weeks, Lukes reported seeing a mysterious water nymph 6 separate times. The Lancaster Examiner published a story on June 8, 1881. The report described a creature that would surface early in the morning or late at dusk, stare intently at the fisherman, and then slowly sink back underneath the currents, leaving glossy black hair floating on the surface for a brief moment. Lukes admitted he had his rifle with him, but was far too stunned to pull the trigger. A month later, on July 13, 1881, the Lancaster Intelligencer reported that another fisherman, Sam Mattis, saw the exact same entity near Brushy Island. 2 years later, in August 1883, the York Gazette recorded a night fisherman spotted her again at 3 a.m. near a large boulder, watching him silently for 5 minutes before diving into the depths. Sightings persisted in river logs all the way through December of 1913. And if you think river mermaid stories died out in the early 1900s, let's open an official evidence file from a small town in Wisconsin, a town ironically named Siren. This is in the Upper Clam Lake of Burnett County, Wisconsin. It's 865 acres of water, maximum depths of about 80 feet, and the first sighting was reported in August 12th of 1922. The foundational account begins with Harold Erickson, a commercial fisherman. At 5:30 a.m. on August 12, 1922, Erickson was pulling nets 150 yards from shore when a female head and shoulders surfaced smoothly from the water. It stared at him for 10 seconds, then submerged, leaving no splash or wave pattern behind. Erickson's account sat in the local historical records until July 1934, when Margaret Thompson, owner of the Clam Lake Resort, documented 5 separate sightings by different guest parties over 3 weeks. Across independent reports spanning 8 decades, the descriptions were eerily consistent. The anatomy was a human-proportioned torso standing 3 to 4 feet out of water, pale upper body with scaled lower anatomy visible through clear water, large, dark, intelligent eyes. The behavior was completely silent, surfaced vertically between 5:30 a.m. and 7 a.m. in deep sections, 40-plus feet water. Holds the position for 5 to 15 seconds, maintaining a strict 100-yard buffer from boats, then glides downward without creating any kind of a splash. The Burnett County Sheriff's Department and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources investigated these reports between 1967 and 2007. The official conclusion, you may ask, is witnesses' credibility appears high, but physical evidence remains absent. As we cross into the 21st century, modern technology has brought a whole new chapter to this phenomenon. In 1998, off Kailua, Kona, Hawaii, a professional dive operator named Lecher with Jack's Diving Locker was taking a charter boat out when a pod of dolphins began playing in the wake. Suddenly, a customer started screaming and pointing. Less than 10 feet from the bow, what appeared to be a nude woman leapt high into the water. Lecher stated, "I couldn't believe what I saw. Her entire lower half was covered in scales and tapered back into a massive fishtail. She jumped once, then disappeared." In the village of Surbrock, South Africa, in 2008, local resident Daniel Cupido and his friends were near the river at 11:30 p.m. when they heard a sound like someone thrashing wildly against the water. Cupido investigated and saw a figure resembling a pale white woman with long black hair struggling in the currents. When he tried to offer help, the entity emitted a strange, mournful wail that Cupido's mother described as so sorrowful, my heart could take it no more. A local tourism officer vouched for the witnesses, noting that local indigenous lore has long warned of a half-human, half-fish river guardian residing in the deep pools. In 2009, the coastal town of Kiryat Yam, Israel, made the international headlines when dozens of independent tourists and locals, including a man named Shlomo Cohen, reported seeing a young woman lying on the sand who suddenly leaped into the ocean, revealing a tail. The municipal council was so overwhelmed by reports that they offered a $1 million reward for verifiable footage. In 2012, Mermaids literally halted state infrastructure in Zimbabwe. Government workers installing water pumps at the Gwoke and Osborne dams fled the site, claiming mermaids were harassing them and causing workers to go missing. The Water Resources Minister publicly announced to the Senate committee that traditional chiefs were being brought in to perform rituals to appease the entities. When the state hired foreign, non-local workers to finish the job, these workers also fled the site, refusing to return. The dam project was ultimately delayed for years. And now, in the age of social media, videos claiming to depict sirens surface regularly. In Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, in 2023, a video shared by fisherman Raul Coleman showed two dark humanoid shapes moving rapidly underwater near his boat, accompanied by a high-pitched wailing audio that millions on TikTok claimed sounded like siren calls. So how do we make sense of all of this? Biologically, a classic half-human, half-fish mermaid makes zero evolutionary sense. Joining a warm-blooded, air-breathing human upper body to a cold-blooded, gill-breathing fish lower half is an anatomical impossibility. So, how does mainstream cryptozoology address thousands of reports spanning 2,000 years? One of the theories is the pareidolia and misidentification theory. This is a conservative explanation. Exhausted sailors, dim light, morning fog cause people to mistake seals, otters, manatees, or floating debris as human shapes. Another theory is the aquatic ape hypothesis, a speculative biological theory suggesting a branch of early primates adapted to coastal water environments, losing body hair, gaining subcutaneous fat, and developing webbed digits. A third one is the cryptid substitution. Some cryptozoologists argue that witnesses aren't seeing fish women, but rather undiscovered species of marine mammals or aquatic primates, and that they're simply applying the cultural familiar label of mermaid to them. A fourth theory is the extraterrestrial fringe theory, a theory based on ancient Sumerian legends of aquatic gods like Orgins, suggesting that merfolk could be descendants of genetically engineered marine visitors left behind in deep ocean trenches. So consider this as we wrap up this podcast. We have better maps of the surface of Mars and the Moon than we do our own ocean floor. Marine science freely admits that over 80% of the Earth's oceans remain unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. Remember, for hundreds of years, mainstream scientists mocked sailors who swore giant, boat-crushing squids existed in the deep. The Kraken was dismissed as a myth, right up until the early 2000s, when modern cameras finally captured live giant squids swimming in the abyss. If a 40-foot predatory squid can hide from science for millennia, who is to say what else might be swimming in the dark pockets of the ocean? Okay, so that was my episode today on mermaids, mermen, and sirens. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed writing it and doing a podcast on it. This really does bring me a lot of joy. I wish I had more time to do more episodes. Hopefully someday soon I could clear off some time so I could do that. I'd also like to wish my daughter happy birthday one more time. To know her is to love her, and I love her dearly. I just want to thank you guys again for listening. Thank you for sharing this with your friends. Remember, if you want to write me, I sometimes like to do your stories. So if you want to write me, it's allthingscryptid13@gmail.com. So until next time, keep your ears plugged, stay away from the rocks, and keep watching the water.